Well, hello, that's me again. Today is May 4th, and when I was departing for Yellowstone National Park for a short vacation, and basically doing the mental flash because I needed to kind of rest a little bit from doing everything what I do, I knew there will be some wowzer while I will be vacationing. Well, guess what? There is. And that happened, and let me put it this way. I'm not going to be discussing too much all the details which led to it, but let's start with this. And you know what I'm talking about because I'm talking about somebody who decides to attack Kremlin. And guess what? Russian response today is absolutely unequivocal, and it was clear from the first minutes of what was happening around Kremlin is that Washington responsible for attack on Kremlin. And here's Mr. Peskov in person. Such decisions, the definition of goals, the definition of means, and so on, all this is dictated to Kiev from Washington, and we are well aware of this, Peskov told reporters. The spokesman for President Vladimir Putin dismissed attempts by the United States and Ukraine officials disowned Wednesday attacks as laughable, insisting that we know full well the decision to carry out such terrorist actions are made not in Kiev but in Washington. Are Russians correct? 150% correct, because, and the fact is, everybody knows that basically the whole idea of assassinate Putin or create some kind of the PR disaster originated obviously in Washington. And if you, when you listen to this pathetic blubbering by Karine Jean-Pierre, which stated that, yeah, we do not allow, Ukraine to attack, Kremlin or Moscow or Russian territory. It is really pathetic. I really don't even know how to really even comment on that. It is pathetic. It's the same thing as Russia blowing up Nord Stream 2. Obviously, you already have all kinds of the globalist and other types of media around the world, and I'm talking about not only United States, Canada, or there's also Five Eyes, Australia, for example, or United Kingdom, talking about that it was FSB false flag to basically provide Russia with casus belli in terms of eliminating of Mr. Zelensky and his internal circle. I have to say that, of course, it's also baloney. FSB and Russian intelligence services are not necessarily into this type of activity. It doesn't mean that Russians are not capable of this. Make no mistake. I'm not trying to paint everything white. Intelligence and that type of operations is a dirty, dirty business, but not by means of flying two drones, obviously. Some people say it's Ukrainian production, others say it's Chinese drones, which you can buy on the open market, but at this stage it doesn't matter. Electronic warfare worked as it was supposed to work. It blew them both in the air. There was no damage, and obviously nobody was hurt. And primarily Mr. Putin wasn't hurt. But the fact that there was an attempt on his residence and hence on his life is of absolute huge scale. It is unprecedented, and guess what? Who would order that? We know their names. And I'm on record. The United States is not governable. There are a number of their cliques in Washington, D.C. who are vying for power, and they fight each other, and the one which is on top at this stage are neocons. Why not talk about U.S. Congress, which is absolutely useless, and Mr. McCarthy, the Speaker, or let alone Mitch McConnell, those the spoiled pussies. I mean, they are nobodies, really, and their opinions on them issues of the foreign policy that do not count. They will do as told by the neocons. And we can obviously know that, for example, Victoria Nuland, her circle in State Department, and people in Pentagon who are neocons, they are responsible for doing this. This is absolutely unequivocal. This is absolutely clear as, the sunny day. So, yes, and this is the issue of desperation. They do it not because they're winning, they do it because they are so desperate. But of course, once this happened, guess what? They better start when they retire, look at behind their backs, because things are beginning to develop in such a way that nobody would even predict it before what was happening. And here we come to their piece of video, so to speak, which was circulating around media for a couple days now. Well, no, it's last Friday actually. Commander of the European forces of the United States Army, General 4-star Mr. Cavoli, and he is giving his deposition or talks to the Armed Services Committee. And guess what Judge Napolitano, how he titled this his speech, so to speak. General Christopher Cavoli, U.S. European Command head, sounds like Colonel Douglas MacGregor and Scott Ritter. He absolutely does, because what he did, basically, he blew out all narrative of the American media, which obviously lie, the same as everything which emanates from Washington. In generally, it's complete lies. And he blew it out of the water when he started to speak about the fact that Russian forces are generally not affected by this whole operation, and he didn't want to go into details why Russian armed forces are not really affected or in any way hurt by this special military operation. And I was on the record from the start, from the 24th of February, that I was surprised myself how little of forces Russia committed to the invasion, if you wish, of special military operation. And Russia still fights with most of its forces being in reserve and in rear, and yet we already have basically some data which goes through even into American media. We are talking about tens of thousands actually of the armored vehicles, all kinds of vehicles from tank wiped out from their battle order. We're talking about with American officials admitting that 98% what have been sent to Ukraine by NATO has been obliterated. So. And Russia didn't even involve its reserves, didn't come to in full force yet. And when you look at this, do you understand why Cavoli does this? Because obviously there is a real danger of people who are, if you look attentively at who are Washington people, if you look on those neocons, you look on those John Boltons, Victoria Nulands, Kagans, and what have you, and people who basically run, well, it better say ruin American foreign policy, and with it they ruin the United States. You look at them, they are incompetent people, plus they're petulant children. And when people write about that Mr. Petraeus is a scholar of warfare, oh, I would love to talk to this guy. I mean, obviously he doesn't have a clue about what modern operations are, and obviously that goes for pretty much all infrastructure of this neocon cabal which runs Washington, and it runs successfully into the ground because Washington is not governable. So is not the country as a whole. And when you look at this and what Cavoli speaks and what he talks about, and when he suddenly, without willing to go into detail why Russians are feeling so comfortable about this whole situation on the front, he goes into the submarine warfare. He says, yeah, there is a huge activity undersea. And that is the whole other can of worms, guys. And I was talking about it, I started talking about it in the Naval doctrine, and this is all about the fact that, guess what? What is happening right now, that means what? United States Navy is moving all of its primarily submarine forces around China and around Russia. But as I already on record, Russian submarines, nuclear, and there are quite a few of them now, on combat patrol. I'm not talking about strategic missile submarines. They're obviously playing cat and mouse, but there is other way of doing things, because when you have 3M14, which is caliber missile, and you need to threaten American territory, you don't have to go too far really away. You can park yourself literally in some kind of the area of bastion, if you will. It's not bastion really. I will talk about bastions later in my next videos. But they park themselves in the distance of about 2,000 kilometers from American shores and wait. They just go around, and guess what? From the point of view of anti-submarine warfare, it's a hugely difficult task to detect, let alone track them. And when you look at this, yeah, now Russian and American navies are playing this Cold War game on a whole other level. This also explains why whenever I speak about China, with all my due respect to immense Chinese achievements, I'm always on record. There are only two serious nuclear navies in terms of, especially submarine power and in terms of impact. And this is US Navy and Russian Navy. And of course, as you might expect, and Mr. Cavoli mentions it, obviously he mentions it for the reason he doesn't want to go into explanation of what combined arms warfare is happening on front and why the NATO already has sustained defeat. When you look at the naval activity, my gosh, and again, we should wait for the end of this conflict to have even some insight into the kind of picture of what is going on. And believe me, something huge is going on right now in the world oceans. So, and Mr. Cavoli, and to his greatest credit, he didn't shame himself like Lord Austin. He didn't shame himself by lying. He basically stated the truth that it's over. And he was on record before, actually, you can look it up, when he stated that we never encountered anything like this in our lives as American military. I know, it never did. And United States operationally, as great Russian economist and observer and commenter, Mr. Alexander Rogers stated, United States cannot do strategy, which I agree entirely. They can do business plans. And this is absolutely brilliant and succinct observation, because basically whatever the plan is done in Washington, and Russians are keenly aware of that. It's not a strategy, it's a business plan, because you cannot get strategy from people who graduated American Ivy League in humanities departments. Those political scientists, well, they're not scientists at all, those political type historians and what have you, and that is why they don't understand what strategy is, how it works, because they don't have military background. And even some like Petraeus, King, Kellogg, and others from American brass who are basically propagandists, they never studied anything. They don't know crap about World War II. They don't know how operations, real combined arms operations are done. And even when the United States military did invent brilliant term, I agree, it's great. Russians still call it combined arms, but Americans decided to go a little bit further and say multi-domain. I agree, these are multi-domain operations across the whole spectrum of human activities, from propaganda to intelligence to what have you. And of course, when you look at it from this point of view, that, United States doesn't have ability to plan and basically strategize that type of operations, because the scale of it is beyond industrial and military capacity of the United States. Russia, however, is doing okay. And this brings us also to the other thing, which is Mr. Patrushev, number 2, basically, in terms of power in Russia, who stated that, and you understand, Mr. Patrushev is a consummate intelligence officer who spent a huge number of years in FSB, who stated that actually, and I quote, the preservation of Ukraine as a state is not in plans of the United States. That's what he stated. And this is absolutely true, because the United States and those petulant children, those infantile people who basically have no skills. Well, I know some people say that Victoria Nuland is good diplomat. I don't think so. She's diplomat at all. The same as her hubby. He is not a real politologist or political scientist. None of them are. They are basically fake people with fake degrees. But and that's what American degree mills such as humanities and Ivy League they produce. I mean, America doesn't have now acting diplomats. They have active, real good intelligence people. And as the result, we have this constant narrative that everything is going fine, but in reality it's quite opposite. And I wanted to dispel any kind of speculations on this matter that it's easy when hindsight is 20/20 vision. No, if you look attentively at my blog, and this was one of many, and this was 7.5 months ago, I believe, August 24th, 2022, and this was another follow-up which was, I believe, even earlier, from June or something like that. And in my piece called, that's why I love actually internet, it preserves records. It's very difficult to hide anymore, and you are responsible for what you say. But look what I wrote on Wednesday, August 24, 2022, in the piece on Wunderwaffe Thinking Again and some other items. Look at this. You remember, this was the time when Russians were supposedly, running out of everything and were surrendering territory. The only kind of metric which those political science professors can understand, and all those strategists from Washington understand how the war works, which it doesn't. But okay, here it is. Certainly not all political observers understood this and other operational realities of special military operation, with some of them going even as far as suggesting that Russia has to wrap SMO up as fast as possible in order not to leave combined West any opportunity to escalate and provide enough armament to VSU or Armed Forces of Ukraine to counter SMO. As life has shown, as it is almost always the case, Russian general staff knew better. And I was already warning about it. And here it is. So, in a bizarre twist of geopolitical roller coaster, it is almost expedient for Russia to drag it as long as possible, because the longer SMO continues now, the deeper and more desperate combined West becomes because of the realities of its largely fictional economy. Not to mention the fact that no Western weapon system can do anything to change outcome of SMO, which is obvious to anyone with the half brain. I wrote it more than 7 months ago, and as you can see yourself, so I've been on record from the start. Once I understood, I thought that Russians will go in, full force, then take Kiev or something like that. But then, when like in 2-3 weeks you begin to see what is happening, and yeah. You begin to know what is going on, because you immediately got the response from Washington, which stated that it will provide everything the Kiev regime, which is terrorist regime, will need. And the United States supported them ever since. And that was the best strategy which Russians could ever come up with. And as you can see right now, and you speak to people who are real professionals, and I can start talking to all people who go primarily Judge Napolitano's show, obviously. We talk about Douglas McGregor, Larry Johnson, Scott Ritter, Garland Nixon, and all kinds of people who actually are astute observers, and many of them are professionals, military and intelligence professionals. You will understand now that basically it was all about not just Ukraine. However, Russia's hand was forced, and Russia had to interfere there. No, it was about NATO, which, quoting Douglas McGregor, a couple of 3 days ago, is de facto stopped existing as the military bloc. And this is about rolling back everything to the 1997 borders before NATO expansion. And we are looking at the game here on a completely different level, and those people in Washington, and as I already stated, this cabal, are getting really desperate. So are getting desperate other globalists, and when you look at the overall state of the Western media, they are completely shell-shocked, especially when begin to get the news of what is going from front. And look at this, what we need to start dealing with. First, we have to understand that, combined West in a very bad place, and as the news have it, 2 days ago, Russia, speaking in the United Nations Commission on the Human Rights, made a presentation of the fact of Russophobia and discrimination and threats for Russophone population of France. So French at it again. And there you go. They are threatening and, discriminating against peaceful people. And Russia made the presentation of that. But French, they voted for it. Again, don't look at me. They now started to actually witch hunts against the politicians, for example, from Sarkozy cabinet. And here's Mr. François Fillon, a former prime minister of Sarkozy government, which, Sarkozy certainly had more balls than whatever France produced after that. Not that I like the guy, but here it is. He was accused of peddling Russian influence and, doing things like in favor of Russia. And he was on record yesterday when he stated that first, the guy is not a coward, definitely. He has balls. He told those people in commission, almost, basically troika, some kind of the, political, show trial. He told them to, pound sand, and he said, you know what, I'm private citizen, and if I want to, I will sell pate and the Red Square if I will decide to do so. Good answer. Of course, you know what, anybody selling pate on the Red Square has to go through such channels as Mr. Putin, but I think so Francois Fillon knows Mr. Putin personally, and that's his most important sin, so to speak, in accordance to modern French government, and I mean despicable, the herpes of human beings who work in French media, all of them without exception. I remember the French from Le Monde to Le Figaro to what have you, just calling, for example, Serbs during the gang rape of Serbia by NATO, they were calling them animals. And they just applauded the fact that the Serbian civilians have been blown out by NATO airplanes. So that's the kind of people who are in France right now in charge. And again, as I already stated, mostly mainstream media in the combined West is a sewer. In Russia, it is also true. Very much many media are also a sewer, as are discredited and absolutely unprofessional so-called military correspondents. But that is the whole other story altogether. But let's take a look what is happening in terms of people being butthurt so badly that we have this guy. Remember, I'm showing you his CV, and this is Mr. David X, and let me put it this way. Here's the guy who writes, and he's passing in the United States for the military specialist and expert, and he writes everywhere. And look at this. This is the guy what his background is. He attended Eisenhower High School from 92 to 96. After graduation, he enrolled at Furman University and got a bachelor's degree in history in 2000. Then he went to the University of Virginia to study medieval history before transferring and graduating from the University of South Carolina with a master's degree in fiction. 2004. This is the guy who is military reporter, and here's the guy who writes about all those things. And look at this. He is butthurt here when writing yesterday that, oh my gosh, the US Air Force has retreated from Taiwan without a shot fired. And he writes about the US Air Force is the biggest and most powerful Air Force in the world, but maybe not for long. I have news for this guy that it hasn't been the strongest, most powerful Air Force in the world for a long time now. But Mr. X, who is our fiction writer and the guy who evidently sustained some kind of concussion while being in Afghanistan and reporting, quote unquote, from there, that's what he states. Look at this. He states that the math has been brutal for the world's biggest air force, which is the US Air Force, which today operates around 5,200 aircraft of all types. That's 1,300 more aircraft than Russian Air Force has. That's already interesting admission, because United States loves to portray that it has 13,000 aircraft, which of course is not true. And out of those 5,200 aircraft of all types, how many will be able to basically sustain operational tempo Russian Air Force does? Oh, very few of them. And then you have the situation that, yeah, they have more aircraft than China. But look at this. The Russian Air Force is tied up and losing planes fast. Well, I have for this boy some news. He obviously lies because Russia doesn't lose that many aircraft, because Russia, unlike the United States, knows how to deal with the suppression of the enemy's air defense, which is real air defense. And actually Russians, even by the admission of everybody, including from those leaks, they contradict Mr. David X, who is BSing American public as always, because he is ignoramus and he has zero background in any of the operational methods. But actually, as you all know, it's admitted that they will run out of missiles for S-300 sometime this month, just May. So after that, well, we already know that operational tempo, which was actually high before that, especially for the what's called frontal aviation, these are helicopters and close air support aircraft, it increased even more, and you have more and more aircraft getting involved in all kinds of their attacks on whatever is left of the Ukrainian armed forces. And David asks if that wouldn't hurt him badly. We have suddenly the American pilots, not some rah-rah guys who graduated from the stupid Top Gun Maverick University, or some astronaut turned congressman or senator who still wet dreams about flying something really modern. But here it is. Even this Business Insider, which is a really tabloid basically, and also is run by all kinds of the people who have no clue, but he said, former F-16 pilot says he would not want to fly mission over Ukraine right now, arguing there is no fighting chance. And here it is. But as air combat experts have argued that this aircraft would have little battlefield impact when they talk about transferring F-16 to the armed forces or whatever is left of Air Force of Ukraine. And they're absolutely true. And it doesn't mean that just F-16. It doesn't matter what you transfer. F-15, F-22, F-35, they will be all detected, tracked, and shut down, if not by air defense complexes, then by Russian Air Force. As a former F-16 pilot said, these jets don't have a fighting chance given Russian air defense systems. Of course they don't, because the United States never fought anything like this in its history. And even there, when encountering Vietnamese air defense during the Vietnam War, in 10 years, United States lost 10,000 aircraft there. Most of those aircraft, it was 7,500 were of course helicopters, but 2,500 aircraft were fixed-wing aircraft ranging from strategic bombers to all kinds of phantoms and they were lost. 800 of them have been shut down by Soviet-made air defense missile systems, and a lot of those were shut down by Vietnamese pilots, some of whom were just great pilots. And they were flying anything from MiG-21 to even good old MiG-19s, which were excellent dogfighters. And so when you look at the experiences of the United States with real air defense, forget about Russian air defense. It doesn't matter what they throw at it. And again, if somebody wants to get acquainted with R-37, like AWACS planes or F-22s or F-35s, well, they certainly can do that, but I mean, it's going to end up really badly. And when you get to this, and then you begin to look at another, basically, sewer of the so-called 1945 website. I don't know, they call themselves military professionals. I know only one military professional there, actually two, James Holmes, but again, he, as of lately, and I understand, he was suffering from the seeing the situation with the United States as a country and its military being basically disintegrating. But they are mostly, and then of course, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, the rest of them are all those freelance guys, boys with zero understanding of anything about warfare, or basically understanding it on the level of NCO or private first class. And so here's the one guy who writes there a couple of days ago that, is Putin, afraid of coup? Putin is likely very aware of efforts on the way to replace him, but has taken steps to make ousting him as difficult as possible. This is the type of the garbage will all those military analysis sites provide for the United States. The name of the guy who provides this garbage basically is Jack Bugby. And look who Jack Bugby is. He is some boy who was in the look at this. Using his experience in the far right as a teenager, Jack aims to educate people. He was a far right teenager. Then he suddenly had the epiphany and he stopped trying to be such. But he obviously, and you have guessed it, has degree in political science from some backward school in hell knows what kind of the county in the Great Britain. And when you look at this, and this guy, guess where he gets his information? Oh yes, as any so-called American, primarily neocon or Western neocon garbage peddlers, he takes it from this guy. You see, Mr. Galemov Abbas Radikovich, he used to be the speech writer for Mr. Putin a very long time ago. And guess what? He is now officially stated as the foreign agent. He was always part of the Russian liberal forces, which are basically criminal forces, and he is now being on the loose, and he has actually bounty on his head. I don't know what the guy is now hiding, but I mean, the guy is a scumbag, as most of the Russian liberals are, and guess what? He provides and feeds all those idiots in the American and Western media with this trash about facts which he doesn't know, and they do not have access anywhere near to real Russian government and people who make decisions in Russia. But you can look at this, and this is what is happening. And suddenly there are all those conflicting narratives, but of course, as I already stated, Mr. Cavoli is, I mean, oh my God, that's a bomb. And if the leaks were not bad enough, we have the situation with the four-star general and basically commander of the European NATO forces, because that's who he is, de facto. And he's saying like, yeah, we cannot even fight them. And that's the desperation. And of course, there is another thing. Neocons, I mean, being cowards, and most of them never experienced any kind of life difficulties. Those good old boys and girls who study whiteboard theory, who never, like Wolfowitz, for example. The guy is a complete idiot. He actually doesn't understand what actual geopolitics is. None of them understand that. Not only they miscalculated, I mean, but they are desperate because the war is effectively over. And that is why this funny thing about counteroffensive of Ukraine, yeah, let them come. But as rumor has it, and very well actually justified rumor, and very with a high degree of reliability of information in it, Ukrainians don't want to go to this counteroffensive. They know they will be annihilated. Just in Bakhmut alone, in April, 15,000 were KIAs. And so we continue to see this kind of pattern here, and that's what I wanted to tell you about this attack on Kremlin. And now, who is Mr. Zelensky? He's that man walking. Will he come back to Ukraine? I don't know. His curators from CIA and this cabal or whatever, the sect or cult of the neocons in Washington, who for now run this country, they may not allow him, or they may want to make a martyr out of him, or they will kill him themselves. So, but Zelensky obviously is on the verge of the paranoia, and again, we have to wait and see. But I think so now, some people around him, they also should understand that everybody knows their addresses, where they are, and you go and attack the president of the nuclear superpower. Let me tell you, if the caliber 3M14 will fly into White House, guess what's going to happen? And the United States will not be able to intercept it because they don't have the systems which really can reliably defend Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. could be flattened even by the means of the conventional weapons and all those NASAMS which failed miserably, and other Patriots which United States still afraid to send because that will be embarrassment as every single other weapon system. So when you have this, yes, and they will have, of course, Victory Day parade on May 9th. And Washington hates it because basically the whole Washington military mythology is built around the fact that it was the United States which defeated Hitler, which absolutely not true. It was the Soviet Union and Soviet people and Russian people, majority of it, who took the brunt of that war, and they have the full right to celebrating defeating military power of which U.S. Army and U.S. Armed Forces, when adjusted for the historical time and technological and economic issues, were just not even in the same league. I mean, Petraeus and Walter Model Erich von Manstein and General Keane, Mad Dog Mattis, and any other serious Guderian or any other of German generals. They are not even the same league. United States produced only few really true outstanding generals such as Eisenhower and Bradley and Hodges maybe, and the people of that nature. The rest of it is just, it's Hollywood. I mean, those people would know how to fight serious enemy. And here we are. And this is what I wanted to tell you upon my return from beautiful, beautiful Yellowstone National Park. And you'd go there. I love American West. I adore it. I love people in those red states like Montana, you know. And you rest with your soul and mind. And America is insanely beautiful country. It's you look at the Yellowstone National Park, or you look on the basically surroundings, and the nature is absolutely stunning. People are great, and you look at this and you see what is being done to the country by this cabal of the miscreants and people who are basically evil in Washington. You have to ask the question, what are they preparing next? Do they want to die? If they want to, they will. And that's the thing which they probably begin to sense. And this is what I wanted to talk to you about today. And as always, guys, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel, and those who can afford it, please support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee or two. I would really appreciate this. And I'll talk to you soon enough, guys. Bye bye.